be able to get this meeting started. Everyone is here that is going to be, so we'll start by calling this meeting to order at 12:06 on February 10th. Our first order of business is to declare any conflicts of interest. Hearing none, we'll move to the approval of the agenda as circulated. Thanks, Doug, for doing that. Everyone's had a chance to see the agenda. Excellent. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Lauren, seconder, Emma, all in favor, signify by saying aye or raising your hand, so you don't have to go off mute if you're on it. Perfect. All right, moving right along. We have also the approval of our minutes. Thank you to Lupe for preparing those. Everyone's had a chance to take a look at those. Great. I'll get a motion for approval of the minutes as circulated. Lauren, okay. Seconder. Emma, all in favor, signify by raising your hand. I'm looking at y'all so I can see it. Perfect. Thank you. And minutes are approved. Our first item on our agenda today is the municipalities and mental health follow-up discussion led by Lauren. Lauren, I will hand the floor over to you. Thank you for taking this on.
Yeah, and I did last night I did send a little document of what I'm about to read. So
Okay.
if you want to follow along. So this is the exact same of what I read last time, except specifying like who launched it and where funding and such.
Okay.
To clarify for each of those. So starting with Nova Scotia Men's 24-hour helpline, it came together and was funded by a few organizations. The first one is Nova Scotia Advisory Council on the Status of Women.
Mm-hmm.
Second one is the Department of Community Services. And the third is Through Standing Together, which is an action plan by the government to prevent domestic violence. So a few different areas to make that possible.
Okay.
The second one, Nova Scotia's First Responders Mental Health website. This also has a collaboration. First one is NSNS, which is Nova Scotia's Nurses Union.
Mm-hmm.
Second one is First Responders, Emergency Service Employers, the government, and Workers' Compensation Board.
Okay.
The third one, Cape Breton's Regional Hospital Foundation, and they put in a Mental Health and Addictions Patient Care Fund. That is, the research that I did basically said that it was supported by the Hospital Foundation, and the Hospital Foundation is a registered charity that is supported by fundraisers, donors, and donations. Number 4, PAUSE in Nova Scotia. It was made possible through a grant from the provincial government. MOSH, which is the Mobile Outreach Street Health in Nova Scotia. It just said it was a result of many community and government agencies working together to form it. Then we moved to Saskatchewan, Prince Albert. The police wellness strategy in Prince Albert, and it didn't exactly say specifics, but it said the program was budgeted at $100,000 and implemented by the Prince Albert Police itself. That's kind of the most specific I got through that. Again, Saskatchewan, Prince Albert, the Homelessness Action Initiative. It is a partnership between the Prince Albert City, Community Advisory Board of Homelessness and funded by the Government of Canada Reaching Home program.
Okay.
And then I have two more for BC, the PACT Peer Assisted Care Program. It wasn't very specific as well, but it was launched through the Canadian Mental Health Association's North and West Vancouver branch. And lastly, the Yukon Whitehorse, the first supervised consumption site. So Blood Ties for Direction Center. That center is a non-profit organization in the Yukon, and it is in partnership with the government of Yukon to support this consumption site.
Okay. Great. Thank you for the follow-up on those. And I'm interested, I think, Lauren, on a couple of them, because there's some that were clearly cities were involved with them. So I think those would be good for us to take a look at, maybe even in a little more detail. The Prince Albert, the city of Prince Albert, that homelessness action initiative. I'm interested to know a little bit more, I think, on that Government of Canada program that they're, so basically it seems like it was the city that came up with the idea and came up with the initiative, and then the Government of Canada paid for it. That's seemingly something I think the city of Charlottetown could certainly look at if they haven't already, especially if there is funding programs out there. So maybe if you could take a little bit of a look at this Government of Canada Reaching Home program to see what sorts of initiatives, or whether that fund even exists anymore. I'm not sure when they started this initiative. So that might be good to see as well. And then the other one that I had thought was interesting to hear more about was that the supervised consumption site in Yukon. I bet you if you started to look a little bit further at supervised consumption sites in cities in Canada, I think you're going to find some more information on that in particular. So I think it would be interesting to see what other provinces are doing with the safe consumption sites, and how involved the cities have been with that. Like, I'm sure, I know that there's quite a few of those harm reduction organizations in, like, say, Vancouver, for example. It would be interesting to know if any of those are funded or partnership with the actual city of Vancouver, or whether they're all kind of not for profit led groups. But those are the two I think that have really kind of piqued my interest to learn more about, and I think I'd like to know a little more about how the cities were involved in those, to see if we could somehow get Charlottetown to do something similar. Does anyone else have any comments for Lauren in regards to these 9 initiatives she's kind of highlighted, or anyone want more information or anything like that from them?
Thanks for organizing and getting all of that together, Lauren. Great job.
So yeah, so Lauren, if you think if maybe at the next meeting you can come back with a little more information on those two, and then we can kind of see where we end off with those.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Sounds
great.
good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks again. Okay, so now we'll move on to the Startup Zone event planning discussion. Emma and I met with Shelby McLean of the Startup Zone last week to talk a little bit about the event. Emma, why don't you just give us a little bit of a highlight on what we talked about with Shelby, and then we can also discuss, now that we have an idea of restrictions and when things might be lifted, we may want to discuss a little bit more on our timing of our event, things like that. So why don't you start us off, Emma, with that?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so we met with Shelby. She hasn't gotten back to us with a price yet, but hopefully she will tomorrow or early next week. And the startup zone is definitely very interested, and they would give us like a preferred rate for sure. Seems like we'd be able to set up the room however we want. The startup zone has not been able to have public in there yet, but I think that will be starting next week with the lifting of restrictions. So Lucas and I will go actually see the site then and have a better idea of how we could lay it out to make sure we incorporate those different tables and things like that. And Shelby was also going to brainstorm on her end how we might be able to make sure people are engaged with the speakers and things like that. One thing we did discuss was maybe organizing to have the speakers that were speaking about the speakers, I don't mean speaking to the whole room, but at those tables, if you guys remember doing like the group speaking about relevant topics that are aligned with the city's objectives. We talked about maybe having those for say like the first hour, and then the next hour is more of a total networking opportunity. And in terms of bringing in some food and having possibly a cash bar for people, that is definitely an option. So we would just have to contract someone to run that and bring in the food. So likely we would probably first approach like the merchant man or something, just because it's right across the street and they might be able to provide us with some food and they would run the bar. So we wouldn't have to have any risk or responsibility with that. And the startup zone definitely said that they would be able to assist us in finding at least one, speaker from the people who operate out of there for one of the sections. Shelby had a few ideas, especially maybe people in our demographic who are newcomers to Prince Edward Island and operating a business. That might be a good topic to have covered. I'm not sure if I'm forgetting anything.
No, I think that was a good overview. Yeah, so basically we want to get there, take a look at the space, but it seems like everything, like the startup zone really seems quite keen on partnering with us. And I thought it was pretty good also that we had kind of access, or they gave us access to some of the people in their kind of community that might be able to help us with the tables and the speaking and all of that. So I thought it was a great meeting with Shelby. And yeah, and then now I guess we're just waiting on the budget, and we'll be able to kind of come up with a draft budget once we get some more information from her. So and I just followed up with her today, so I'm not expecting her to get back to us probably till early next week. So that's fine with me. What I wanted to talk about was the timing of this event. Now that the government of PEI has announced their three-part plan to kind of get things back to normal, in air quotes, I'll put normal. But it does seem like the timing of our event in March, the way that the restrictions are being lifted, we're not really getting the best, we won't get a very high attendance if we're stuck with those restrictions. I believe we'd be limited to 20 people in person during that time frame. So I think the 20 person limit, it goes up to 20 like March 18th or something like that. Whereas we were planning on having our event end of March, so we'd be up to 20 by that point. But if we went with our May rain date, we would potentially be able to host an event with no limit on the amount of people that are able to attend. So for me personally, I think there probably would be some value in going with the later date, for that reason, that we're not going to be limited to 20 people. I don't think anyone really wants to go to a mixer where there's a max 20 people. So I think that I would like to tend to move the date from March to May, for that reason, to give us, even if that timeline by the government is pushed back to May is probably, we're going to be in a good position at that point to have an event where we can host as many people as want to attend. So I guess if anyone else has any concerns about moving it to May, I think that probably would be our best path forward.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. Yeah. And then it's kind of nice too. It kind of follows with our theme of like, this is kind of the start of back to normal, and we want people to get to know each other and be able to meet in person for the first time in potentially 2 years. This will be for some people. So I think it would be a great event to have later on in the spring, and we can kind of ride the coattails of people feeling happy and wanting to go out and do things, I think is also important. So let's go with our rain date for the event then. Okay. And I mean, also that gives us more time to work on a budget and advertise as well. So it's really a win-win, I think, in that. So
What was the date in May again? I should have known. Yeah.
Oh, it
I
was.
put it in my calendar.
No problem. I certainly in the minutes.
Yeah, if you don't know, I can look back.
No, I don't have it off the top of my head. But let's make sure that it makes it into the minutes for the next time, so it's there. So just give me 1 second. I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah.
I'm pulling it up now too, if you want.
Okay.
I don't know if my computer's any faster.
Let's raise.
Backup date May 18th.
Perfect.
You win.
So
Go
sorry,
ahead.
Doug, go ahead.
I was going to say a quick budget consideration. It's not a make or break thing, but I was just thinking, since the city's fiscal year ends on March 31st,
Okay.
I would think that there might be some money from this strategic priorities fund, I guess you could say, that they wouldn't have spent.
Yeah.
So I would suggest, although it might be complicated just because the money won't necessarily be spent until after the beginning of the new fiscal year, but I would say we should aim to have a budget ask at the March strategic priorities committee meeting.
Okay.
That way they either are going to be aware of it in advance of the event if we go with May. Well, it seems like we are going with May.
Mhm.
But if they happen to say, okay, we actually have like this extra $1,000, $2,000 that we didn't spend for this fiscal year, then that way we could just make sure to access it before that whole cycle starts over, and then they might be more hesitant to spend because they don't know what the forecast for the coming year looks like.
Okay. Yeah, that
Just-
works. That's good for me. Do you know, you don't happen to know the date off the top of your head, Doug, for when that meeting is in March?
It's easy to find. I'll just take a second. It's usually, I believe, the third Thursday of the month,
Okay.
but it's the most likely one to get pushed back, just because the schedules of some of those counselors are occasionally
Yeah.
unpredictable. So it looks like the March meeting is Thursday, the 24th.
Okay. So we'll have a budget before then.
That would be great. And like I said, it's not make or break. If it needs to wait a bit, I'd just say it's probably going to make our chances better of getting the funding we want.
Okay, great. Okay, so that's, I think from there, really, we'll Emma and I will go tour the space. We'll work on a draft budget that will circulate to the committee. And then from there, we'll really just start working on some sort of event schedule and getting things organized that way, identifying who we want to be speakers, and then come up with a communications plan after that. So definitely still lots to do on this, but we will we'll keep it on the forefront and keep working away at the tasks. I think that's all we really need to talk about in the event right now. Now that we have a date and a venue set, it's we'll just have to start ironing out some further details. The next agenda item we have is our review of the recommendations from the previous committee reports. So I'm thinking the best way to do this is just to go through them line by line. If it was yours that you were responsible for, please give us some information on it. And then if the folks who aren't here, for those, we'll just skip, and then we'll do those at our next meeting. It's, I think, really the best way of going about that. And I'm just going to take some notes as well on these. So just feel free to start when it's your turn, and I'm just going to make some notes underneath in our Google Doc here as well. So I think you had number 1 on there.
Yes, I did number 1.
Okay.
Just after your notes, and create one user council. And the PI has founded a Premier's Youth Council that engages and involves young islanders in decisions that affect them. And that council is a province-wide youth advisory body that will work to help focus policy and programs in a manner that best services the interests of young islanders. The council advises the premiers and ministers on ways to enhance programs, policies, strategies, and resources for youth. Functions of the council. The function of the councils include providing input and advice on issues relating to and affecting young islanders. And they also leading community engagement activities that will offer opportunities for a broad range of youth voices to have input into government decision making. And then serving as a sounding board for departments during preliminary policy development. And the Premier's Youth Council is made up of 12 to 15 individuals who are 16 to 29 years of age, and they should passionate about creating better opportunities for young islanders or are engaged with their communities. And they also are diverse in respect to perspectives and life experiences. The council members serve on a volunteer basis without the remuneration, but they will receive some service like without the remuneration. And the membership is a 2-year term with half the annual members appointed for a 1-year term to ensure only half the members turn over in any given year. Well, the council meets monthly. Minimum members are expected to participate in 4 meetings a year in person or by video conference. Additional time will be required to participate in various engagement activities. Members should be prepared to volunteer and estimate 30 hours a year. And youth islanders who are interested in it, and they could apply for it through PI website. Yeah, that's it for this item.
Okay. So thank you, E, for that. And I think, from my understanding of that recommendation and how and I guess and how the what our committee was thinking of at that time was they were saying there is this youth advisory committee, there is this premier's council, there is fusion, there are all these sorts of or committees focused on um, focused on young people. But then I think the question then becomes, are they communicating with each other? Are they talking with one another? Does someone from the Premier's Council ever ask Fusion Charlottetown what they're working on? Is there anyone asking us what we think about what needs to happen at the provincial level to make the municipal level better? And so I think what that question becomes is anyone looking to kind of bridge that gap between all those different groups? And I think at this point we're still kind of at the point where we're saying, well, maybe not. Maybe that there is still all these pockets of these youth advisory committees, and we know the Premier's Council is one group that was created. However, they're looking at everything provincially. So I think that what we would say for that one is that there is a group out there that's responsible for the province, but we're still not sure whether all these groups are communicating together. Do you know? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
But
will do more research about that.
yeah, if you could, and maybe even if you could, Yi, try to identify if there's any other youth-focused committees in PEI. And so maybe what we need to do is to even come up with a list of what other groups are out there, like the Premier's Council, like our committee. Is there one for the federal government? I think there might be. Is there one? Does Stratford have one for their town? Does Summerside have a youth committee? I think those would be questions that we want to ask before we can say whether or not it's been completed. I think one thing to note, though, is that the city of Charlottetown can't really force all these groups to communicate with each other, but at least we can be the group that looks at how we can build some connections that way.
Okay, got you.
Great. So number 2 there, Lauren, I think you...
Yes. And I just also want to ask you, for all these groups involved in youth, do they even know that we exist and such? Like all these groups, like, is there...
I think you've hit the nail right on the head, Lauren. This is what we're trying to find out. Do these groups know that the other groups exist? Are they trying to build connections? Are they trying to collaborate? I think our work with Fusion on the last event is a really good example of how two groups focused on youth can really do things together. So I think a great question is, does the Premier's Youth Council know we exist? I don't know if they do. So those might be, you're right. Once we identify those groups, we can certainly make ourselves known to them, but also kind of vice versa. I think that's really, I think, what we want at the end of this is everyone to know who we are and for us to know who everyone else is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just thought with some of the things, like, for example, the things with mental health that I'm bringing up that are involved maybe provincially and such, that working together or asking each other questions to be able to answer those things, we can kind of meet each other's needs in a way, or kind of bounce ideas off each other. That could be a very good...
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I guess I
absolutely.
didn't know they existed, so I didn't know that I could go to someone else's youth base that
Mm-hmm.
would maybe be able to answer some of these questions or.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right, exactly right. Like that would be, that's going to be an important part of this, and I think that's what these people in this report were trying to say is that seems like there's a lot of people out there trying to do this type of work, and they're not communicating with each other, they're not collaborating, and there needs to be more of that because I mean we're a small place, so there should be lots of opportunities for people to come together and do things.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's great. I think that's we're really getting to the point of that one there.
Okay.
I'm just trying to pull up, there it is. I couldn't find the I couldn't find the report on the website. I just wanted to read through it. Doug, do you know where I could find the 2015 report?
On the main
On the-
Charlottetown
Yeah,
website.
I usually have it with, I might have it over here.
Like, is
Yes.
this something that we
Yeah, I
would
do
take
have it
on?
Sorry, yeah, I knew I had a copy of it. I just wanted to read the recommendation because I think we shortened them on our. Yeah, so here's that actual recommendation. For number one was create one youth council to meet quarterly, working towards common goals. Representatives from federal government, provincial government, City of Charlottetown, Fusion, Biz Under 40, 21 Inc., etc. And then it says here, a council such as this one could begin to tackle current employment issues that Charlottetown and PEI as a whole face, such as the ability to earn a livable wage and find employment opportunities. By working together instead of in silos, these issues become much more manageable. So that's what really I think they're saying is we need to see if these groups are talking to each other and is there a way that we can help facilitate that. So that's good. It's great.
Well, that's something that we could just take on, isn't it? Like if we want to do that, wouldn't one of us just reach out to these people, see if their groups are interested and organize a meeting? Like who else would take it on?
Yeah, you're right. That's not really something that we are expecting like the councilors, city councilors to do. That's something I think that has to be youth led is getting some sort of, even if it's like a once a year type
Yeah.
thing where people come together or something like that. I think it's there's certainly there's something there that we can do to fulfill that recommendation. I agree, Emma. I agree that one itself could very well be okay. Then why doesn't the youth advisory committee work on that?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's great. So we have something to talk about on that one. Good. Lauren,
I definitely think sorry, I just want to say, I definitely think meeting especially once a year or more, because so many of these things are combined. They don't just follow from one specific area.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that would be a great way of finding other people that are interested in certain areas and doing it that way. So I think we need to really take a look at what we could do in the future to help fulfill that recommendation.
I like that.
So for that further wise, are we going to leave that to the next meeting, or should we each be doing, I'm just curious, following up on that?
I think I'd like to get through them, and then I'm kind of taking notes to just identify the ones that we're going to be able to consider action items, or there's going to be a couple of these where we're going to say like we don't really even know how to address that. So I think we'll go through them that way. I think Lauren, you had the safe spot next.
Yes, and I did write these on the Google Doc.
Okay.
You want to follow? So basically, to create a safe spot for people to meet, complete transactions, and it was asked that it should be monitored 24/7, well lit and patrolled frequently. So I found that in the winter of 2017, and I talked about this briefly before, but one was made, one was created, but it's right across from the police station, just one. And I just don't think that's enough. And a lot of people aren't even aware that it exists. I didn't know before doing this research.
Okay.
And COVID certainly has put like secondhand items at increased demand, and whether it's like selling, buying, trading. But yes, it's directly in front of the police station, and a place honestly many people don't feel comfortable going to, or they don't even have the ability to get there. And so I just think there needs to be more safe places for people to meet, honestly, just strangers online, because that's pretty much what it is in some forms. A place where people can try things on, feeling safe and comfortable. And I said examples include, but aren't limited to, like the Indigo parking lot there's lots of places around there, people who try things on or feel, there's lots of people. Somewhere maybe in the downtown mall, a little bit more central. Yeah, both locations provide multiple spaces for surrounding people and ability to try things on. Yeah,
Mhm.
summary.
Great. Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, I don't know why there isn't one downtown. Like it seems strange that there isn't one downtown. And I'm also surprised that there isn't one. There should be something like that on the UPI campus. That doesn't really that seems like a no-brainer to me too, that they could help facilitate that out there. And then we'd have one at UPI, one at the police station, and one downtown somewhere. I think that would be a great thing to be able to go back to the city and say, great job, you did it, but maybe just another one in two different places. And if they say, well, we want people to feel comfortable, like, well, you could put it near the fire station if you wanted to have someone down there, because I don't think the police have a detachment or anything downtown anymore. So one there, and then UPI has a security police team as well. You could do one out front of their building or something like that. There's certainly, I think, ways that we could just say, just do a couple more of these things, and also advertise that you're doing them, and make the signage clear that that's what they're for, and go from there. I know I've definitely seen the one in the parking lot at the police station. It does just seem like it's another parking spot at the police station. So something, I think, to make it a little different, and to have even a link on their website for spots to go or something like that, I think would be great. And I mean, it seems also, you're right, there is a lot more people buying things online. Facebook Marketplace is blowing up, like everyone. So it just seems like that's a good one that is tangible, and we can go back to them and say, let's do something more with this. Cool. Number 3.
I have that one.
Yeah.
I want to mention, in case we get in conversation, and I don't know if you need me, but I have to leave at 5 to 1. I have another call at 1. And sorry, I didn't write this in a Google Doc. I forgot about that. But
No, that's fine.
the number 3 was the park and ride. So I'm not sure what they were exactly looking for, but as far as I could tell, there's no city-led park and ride initiatives. There is the CADC parking lot across from the event grounds. That's a $50 charge a month, which would include a shuttle to the Holman Grand. So if you park there, you can get a free shuttle to downtown. I don't think that was even input in 2016, but I don't think it has had much uptake. But I haven't heard of anything else, or was able to find any information on anything else from the city specifically.
Okay. No, that's good. It's just, I mean, we're gonna have some of these where it's just gonna be like not done. So that's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. So I'm just putting in, there's no city-led park and ride currently. CADC did have a program for a fee, and we're not sure if that is still in existence or has much uptake?
Mhm.
Or has had much uptake? Okay. Number 4. Must be someone supposed to be here, that's fine. Reform the taxi bylaw. We did actually have so Robin added this for hers, June 2021. A new taxi bylaw was created to provide information about taxis and make it consistent with other bylaws. So it does look like they did make changes to the taxi bylaw. So that one is, I guess we could consider that one complete for our intents and purposes. Number 6 was me. This was a car-free day, promotion of a car-free day. While there was never really a car-free day, the city actually kind of took that a little further and did like a bike week. So they did that, and I think that was the same idea, promoting active transportation, getting people to not rely on their cars as much. So that was I believe it's been around for a little bit, but the last bike week was in 2021. The week long of events to encourage individuals to become more involved in active transportation, to use their bikes instead of cars. I believe the mayor spent a day running his errands and doing his meetings on his bike. So they did do, certainly there was promotion of active transportation opportunities. I will say, just on top of that, the city definitely has identified active transportation, bike lanes, all that sort of thing as a priority. And I think we see that reflected in, there is a newly created mayor's task force on active transportation, as well. There's an anti-idling policy for city vehicles that was recently implemented, I think, in the last couple of years. Basically saying that city employees, unless you're driving an emergency vehicle, you're not allowed to keep your car running for a certain amount of time, reducing your greenhouse emissions, all those sorts of things. So I thought that was interesting and something that goes a little further beyond car-free day, but it's certainly showing that they're taking that seriously and that they're working towards promoting active transportation. And as well, just the last thing to add on that one, I believe there's over 19 electric vehicle charging stations across the city now. And that was the City of Charlottetown initiative. So I'm going to say that, yes, car-free day was not promoted as much, but they're doing much more than just that. So I would consider that one to be complete, or to say that they've satisfied what we were trying to do there for that one. Okay, number 7.
That was me.
Yeah.
Establish a community space for bands to practice, for artists to work, for hosting chem-free shows. So I have here, the city has many bars and restaurants which supply work and profile, but there's a great need for rehearsal spaces for all artists, affordable and accessible. That's the key. And a key part to Charlottetown is its artistic flair, full of musical theater, local bands, dance schools, like so much emerging artists. And I've really seen just 2 to 3 real rentable rehearsal spaces, but they aren't centrally located or easy to access. Holland College has its own space. There's a new private space called Howie's Loft downtown, another private one owned by Roger Carter, but all are limited. Downtown space is important, and after hours space, I think, is crucial. I asked a bunch of local artists and people that I know and friends, and they pretty much had the same response. They don't know many, and especially that are easily accessible. And like the Guild and Confederation Center, you could say they have spaces, but they're often used for their own shows, and they are definitely not affordable for artists. it would be extremely beneficial to our major music scene, creative artists to have a space for all artists, and inclusion such as like all of them, dancers, musicians, painters, writers, photographers, etc. There's so many, and I was informed when asking and researching, I was informed that Creative PEI, which is a sector council working on behalf of PEI's arts professionals, has been working on making a creative hub. And I contacted their executive director, Mark Sanford, and he kind of wrote me back a little letter, but basically he said, like, the short answer, there's virtually no affordable, accessible studio rehearsal spaces. He did a feasibility study last year on multi-purpose creative hubs for PEI, and it demonstrated a clear demand for spaces. And there is plenty of funding available for fit-up costs, and projections show that such a space would be financially sustainable while very affordable. But the problem is that is finding a building that is eligible for funding, he said. So in order to be eligible for fit up funding, the space needs to be owned by a nonprofit organization or government. And the way this has worked in other places is that an old school, convent, warehouse gets donated or made available to a nonprofit. But in very rare cases, a nonprofit raises money to buy the building or collaborates with the government to create a new facility. But there's no real building, I guess, currently available. So they're looking for different solutions involving maybe renting a private owner, yeah. But yeah, basically the answer is no.
Okay.
But I have all that on the
Yeah.
but
That's really interesting. And I'm really interested to know that there's a group out there that's like looking for this too. For me, I don't think this is probably on city council's radar at all. So I think this is something that we could definitely put on their radar, and talk about it. I see this as and again, a no-brainer. Why not promote and get our musicians and our artists the ability to practice? They're the ones that we're putting out there to try to get people to be entertained and tourist revenues and all those sorts of things. So like, it does seem, it seems like, yeah, we have a lot of spaces that people can play at, but where are these people supposed to practice? And that to me seems like a great way of getting people to live downtown too, when they can work and practice and perform all in the same area. Like that all seems great to me. So I think we can definitely work on that one, and come up with something to kind of bring that back to the forefront, and also use that research and that data from Creative PEI to also say, look, there's other people looking into this too, and there's no reason why the city can't find a building somewhere that they own or the province owns, or an opportunity arises somewhere to put something like that in. I think that'd be great. So that's a good one. Great. I am mindful of the time, and I do think that this isn't we're having really good conversations about these, and I think it is almost valuable to have the rest of the group here too, because I think we're really getting into some good ideas here. So I'm thinking let's get to 10 on our list, and then we'll just call it for today, and then we'll get back to it on our next meeting, because I would like to spend the majority of our next meeting going through the rest of the list, because I think we're getting some good information here, and we're getting somewhere. So I don't want us to feel rushed, or also feel like that we're missing some of our members and they're not able to also voice their opinions here on this sort of stuff. So
I can do 9 because I can't be late for this call.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I just got to regroup. So sorry to skip ahead. 9 was to revitalize the convention center parking lot into a green space for food trucks. And obviously that has not happened.
Yep.
We don't really have much of an update, but obviously Founders Hall did happen.
Mhm.
So like that's kind of a food area. I'm not sure that might tick the box, but obviously not food trucks.
Yeah, and I think also one of the things I want to look at in that one is I know that there's always kind of been it's always seems like food trucks in the city don't really always get along. And I know there's been issues in the past with some businesses and food trucks and city getting permits and all those sorts of things. So I mean that's also something I think we could look at is like, does the city make it easy for people to do this? And if not, what are the barriers and why are there barriers and what can we do to help not, because I mean it's just great. I love when in the summertime when you're walking downtown and there's all those little spots down. It makes the city feel really vibrant and fun. So great. Emma, you can go. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll talk soon. I'll email you once we hear back from Shelby to set up a time to go to the Startup Zone.
Perfect. Thanks so much, guys.
All
See
right.
ya.
See you later. So we had 7, and then we had 8. Who was 8?
I might, but I have no opportunity to do that. I
Yeah.
think I will talk about that next meeting. And excuse me, I will have a meeting at 1 p.m. So I have to go.
Okay, no problem. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you as well, Yi, and we'll see you at our next meeting.
Next meeting. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Bye.
you. So, Lauren, we might just want to wait when we'll talk about yours at our next meeting. But I want to thank everyone for the work that they've done so far, and we can't really even make a motion to adjourn, so we'll just have to end the meeting. So I'll make them. You know what? I'll make a motion to adjourn. Lauren will second it, and both of us will approve it. Meeting adjourned at 12:58 p.m.
Perfect. Lucas, maybe you could just send a reminder to people to add the content they have to that drive, so that
Yeah.
it can just get populated and people can review it for discussion at a later time, and we could just know that the ones that we don't need to address are off the list.
Great. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll do that.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Good to
Thank
see you
you.
both, and we'll talk at next meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.